Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, Jake Tapper over at CNN claims that the Clintons believe that they're above the law. And I find this rather humorous because it's something that we have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. And it shows that even those who are dyed-in-the-wool members of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are even beginning to see through the veneer of the Clinton regime. Basically, Hillary is wanting to become a czar, but I want to delve a little bit deeper into some of the things that Tapper was saying here. Hank Barron with the Daily Wire had this story about what Tapper said, and this occurred back on Wednesday with CNN's senior political analyst David Gergen, who had advised 4 presidents, and Daily Beast's Washington bureau chief Jackie Kucinich, in which Jake Tapper turned to them and blasted Bill and Hillary Clinton after emails had revealed that there was a pay-for-play relationship between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation. And he said that the Clintons acted as if normal rules didn't apply to them. Well, of course that's how they've acted. That's what they've always believed. And this creates a sense of a caste system here in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. It's something that has been playing out time and again with respect to Madam Clinton and those who sit there and believe that they are the upper echelons of the detente wing of either party. You see, the detente wing cannot just be limited to the gutless opposition party or GOP. It's part of this whole establishment, elitist type of thumbing the nose at the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. But it goes further than that. We're not mere populists here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. In fact, we understand that populism is nothing short of an attempt to redefine the political system. It's all about destroying the American system of polity and thereby replacing it with some other system. That's the same sort of mentality and mindset that's adopted by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who are hell-bent on the utter annihilation of the United States, both as a nation and as a people. But the fact that he went to this is very interesting. Back in June, he had asked, he being Tapper, would the argument of reporters not be stronger if these ridiculous, sycophantic questions that were asked of Hillary Clinton yesterday, meaning at the debate, would not that argument be stronger? Well, of course. Again, it shows that there is this disconnect between reality and the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. And that's what we have oft-times warned about on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. But of course, these people don't want to discuss that. They don't want to delve deeper than that. And of course, Jake Tapper is going to play footsie with the Clinton camp because, of course, he doesn't like Donald Trump, and we don't either, but he is part of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, and he doesn't want to do anything other than to promote that leftist agenda that has been at the heart of the media since the newspaper conglomeration of William Randolph Hearst at the turn of the 20th century. As I had mentioned eons ago, it feels like, in that solo flight special that I did with respect to the media and how it developed. But we see that this should really come as no surprise to anyone, seeing as the Clintons have always been opportunistic liars at best. We've spent, what, nearly the past 2.5 decades in this country bearing witness to the wickedness and the sheer corruption of the Clinton campaign, family, and movement, and it shows no signs of improving at any time in the foreseeable future, but that's where we are. And of course, it goes even deeper than this, because if you recall, Hillary claimed that they came out of the White House back in 2000 broke and without resources. I mean, it's laughable, truly laughable. But the fact of the matter is, that is what the Clintons said. That is what Hillary said. And I'm going to cue up a soundbite here, folks, so that you get a chance to hear this from her own mouth, because I think that's the best way to convey the shrill bovine excrement that she has been a slave to since her tenure as First Lady of the state of Arkansas, even. So let me go ahead and cue this up so that we can then delve into it a little more deeply.
Reported you've made $5 million making speeches. The president's made more than $100 million.
Well, if you have no reason to remember, but we came out of the White House not only dead broke, but in debt. We had no money when we got there, and we struggled to, piece together the resources for mortgages, for houses, for Chelsea's education. It was not easy. Bill has worked really hard, and it's been amazing to me. He's worked very hard.
Can you believe that bovine excrement? Can you believe that this is really what they expect us to believe? But that is what they expect us to believe. That is the narrative that they have repeatedly brought to the forefront time and again since they left the White House some 16 plus years ago. But the American people are not stupid like they like to think we are. We do see through the bovine excrement that they attempt to peddle and attempt to cram down our throats. And it just shows how intellectually disingenuous not only the Clintons are, but the entire Fabian socialist agenda. Now, she made that statement back in 2014, and it's as laughable today as it was 2 years ago. Yet the politicians bank on a short memory span of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, because that's what they think is their ticket to success. That's how they think they're going to continue to get high on the hog, for lack of a better term. These Southern colloquialisms start to come to me when I have to go through and suffer through bovine excrement like that which we just heard from Madam Clinton. But there's something to keep in mind with respect to the Clinton relationship with the media. Yes, it's true, the media is in the bag for her, but there's no love lost between them. It's because of her abrasive personality and the way that she attempts to dodge responsibility for anything, doesn't ever want to hold press conferences or be held accountable for anything. That's just par for the course with respect to the Clintons and indeed the entire Democrat Party. It's because they don't care about the truth. They only go about their agenda. And even though the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are firmly in their back pocket, the media still wants to be thrown a bone. After all, that's what they're salivating for. The types of privileges that they can get from a corrupt regime like that of the disastrous Barack Hussein Obama regime, and what they would hope to get under a Hillary Rotten Clinton regime. In fact, it could be speculated that the main reason that they are so fiercely opposed, quote unquote, to the bizarre ascendancy of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian Donald J. Trump, who on any given day also happens to go by the two alter egos of John Barron and John Miller, is because they'd be thrown out. This irrespective of the fact that they had given him so much free airtime that they had essentially aided him in his bizarre ascendancy. But the other thing with respect to the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media is they're sick and tired of the obfuscation that has occurred under the Obama regime as well as from various other Democrats. Hillary has done her best, as I mentioned, to avoid directly answering questions during the campaign. This is the same tactic employed by Obama throughout his presidency. And that's all in stark opposition to the First Amendment's free press protection. The press is supposed to be free to protect us from the clear abuse of federal power we have suffered through under this regime, and we would suffer under either a Trump or Clinton presidency. That's just the facts of life, folks. These are just the facts, and we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are purveying the truth as it comes forth to us. But continuing with the theme of a caste system, we see that Conservative Review's John Gray put out a piece blasting Hillary for attacking the same tax loopholes that she used to get rich. And of course, that in and of itself is rich, but it goes to show this blatant hypocrisy that exists within the rank and file of the frothing at the mouth, Fabian socialist-dominated Democrat Party. They have gone so far to the left that they will do the same sorts of things that the leadership of the Soviet Union did, basically saying, do as I say, not as I do. But we know that this sort of chicanery is par for the course. We have Tim Geithner that was a tax fraud. We have tax concerns about Corzine, who ran around stealing things. The Democrats have always had a bit of this caste system where they are never held accountable for their words, deeds, and actions. And of course, that's something that the conservative punditry and commensurate used to decry. But with respect to the way that Donald Trump had gotten preferential treatment from the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, they didn't say word one. Lush Bimbo's been quiet. Then we have little orphan Annie Yap Yap Toto the Floozy, who's been quiet about that, and Laura Ingenkampf has even come out and said that Texas Senator Ted Cruz was whining about the disparate treatment from the mainstream media. But that is par for the course. Yet, with respect to these turncoats, these sellouts, they need to be held accountable for the betrayal. And of course, this election cycle, besides being the post-truth campaign, is also the election cycle of betrayal. The only silver lining that comes from the excrement storm that is the candidacy of Donaldolf Julius Caesar Trumpolini is the fact that it is exposing those who were just using conservatism as a money-making pet project. It's not that they were movement conservatives. It's not that they believed in it. It was for their own self-aggrandizement at the expense of the true base of the conservative movement. And so they've sold out for this shiny populism. But with respect to what it is that happened with the Clintons' attempts to use taxes to, Gray went and quoted in his article from Bonnie Christian, who wrote for The Week, and it said that 2 of the 5 businesses are tied to Bill and Hillary Clinton specifically. One, WJC LLC, is used by the former president to collect consulting fees. The other, ZFS Holdings LLC, was used by the former Secretary of State to process her $5.5 million book advances from Simon & Schuster. 3 additional shell companies belong to the Clinton Foundation. All of this was done to avoid the taxes, the same taxes that they wish to foist upon against the will of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. And of course, what does it all mean? Well, it shows that they stand in stark opposition to the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. Remember that the natural law tenet of consent of the governed, particularly with the issue of taxation, traces its origins back to the field at Runnymede in England back in the summer of 1215, when King John of Robin Hood fame was forced by the baronage of England to sign the Magna Carta, or Great Charter. And basically what it said is that the king did not have carte blanche to willy-nilly raise taxes. He must first get the consent of the people. If you fast forward some 500 years later to the start of the American War of Independence, one of the rallying cries of our entire cause of independence was no taxation without representation. Well, here we are. We see that these supposed representatives, these people who seek the upper crests of political power in these United States of America, are doing their utmost to cheat the system, again creating this caste system that is the theme of today's Solo Flight Special Edition. And that speaks to the blatant hypocrisy that is just miring our political system right now. No wonder so many Americans find themselves wholly alienated and disenfranchised from the American system of polity, when it is being run by these charlatans, these hucksters, these carnival barkers, these snake oil salesmen. And Hillary Clinton is guilty. There is no doubt that she does this. But can we lay that just at her feet? I don't think so. I don't think so. But still, you have to recall that with respect to her, she was claiming that she came out of the White House in 2000 dead broke and in severe debt. Of course, this is all enough to gag a maggot, because it's simply not the truth. Recall also that during the primary process, nerdface Bernie Sanders, the Vermont Senator Flying Saucer and self-avowed Democratic Socialist, came out and demanded that Hillary release the speech proceeds she had received over the years. But folks, as I mentioned, just as Trump hasn't released his tax returns, Clinton continues to refuse to release this information. Again, it's because they are hiding potentially damning evidence that would work against them with their own base. And of course, the Democrats have always been the party of hypocrisy. That's always been, at least for the past half century, their modus operandi, and they've been doubling down on that as they continue to march steadfast towards the left, in unrelenting fashion, in meticulous fashion, adopting all of the trappings of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist movement. That's why the Democrat Party today is as far to the left as it is. It's not about truth. It's not about integrity. It's not about any of the lofty political philosophies and ideals that propelled the United States to such lofty heights in our relatively brief yet illustrious history. Of course, they don't want you to think about it in that way, and you're certainly not going to see that kind of coverage by the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. You may hear the lopsided reporting of it from the sellout turncoat Benedict Arnold conservative punditry and commensurate, people like Lush Bimbo, Sean Hannity, Michael Ween, Savage, and Laura Inkampf. Does that really expose anything? Does that really lead us to the truth? Does that do anything to advance the cause when we ourselves have put up a deleterious candidate who has been very selective in his outrage, claiming that the electorate is rigged, except when it was he himself that was rigging it? Then it's just him using the system to his advantage. This type of chicanery must come to a swift and immediate end, because it exposes the great and rank and rampant corruption that is plaguing and ailing this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. But again, we know full well that these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist types are going to continue to do whatever they can to push forth their agenda, come hell or high water. But none of this should be surprising, because, of course, having to hide the fact of what their dirty deeds are, if it came to the if it came to the forefront, if it became the center of focus of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, it would irreparably harm her with her own base. And that's something she can ill afford, because she's already the most unpopular Democrat nominee in the past half century. The 2016 election cycle is shaping up to be a nightmare because we have these frauds, these hucksters, these charlatans, these carnival barkers in control of both of the two mainstay political parties. And of course, they are going to continue to push for this tyranny of false unity that has been haunting us in election cycle after successive election cycle. But we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, remain committed to exposing the truth of these frauds and these charlatans to keep things on the straight and narrow. But it's still a major problem. But then, of course, there's another laughably insane development with Madam Clinton. She's come out and demanded that Planned Parenthood should be utilized for Zika virus treatment and funding. Now, why is it that this is something that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists always like to do? Why is this group that really does engage in things that are morally repugnant to a growing number of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, to engage in this stuff? It's really bizarre. And where in the Constitution does it say that the government should be providing this type of funding? Should this not be the realm of private industry? Isn't that what initiative is all about? And is not necessity the mother of all invention? But you can only have that in a free market system. But we see that both Hillary Rotten Clinton and the New York Bulgarian Donald J. Trump, or is that John Barron or John Miller today? I'm not sure which one he is going by today, are opposed to it. They're both opposed to it. They don't believe in the free market. That's why he's wanting to go back to these relics of the rubbish bin of history of trade tariffs. Of course, who ultimately has to pay them? Who ultimately is the one that is penalized by these sorts of things? It's none other than the American consumer. It is the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in these United States of America, we the people. Of course, that's something that the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media aren't going to cover in any detail because of their intellectually disingenuous marriage to this frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist agenda that is diametrically opposed to our system of polity, as well as the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of our Republican form of government. No, they're going to continue to carry water for the Clintons. They're going to continue to push for this sort of insanity that is not found in the clear and concise language within our shared United States Constitution. That's just par for the course. That's the way they play this game. It's sickening. It's disgusting. And it really should have no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. But folks, here we are. This is what we face. This is the undeniable plan, scheme, and modus operandi of not only the Fabian socialist leftists, but also the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP. They are the ones that are trying to expose us to these unacceptable, unsustainable developments. And of course, this is the great divide that exists between people of conscience and the new governmental caste system. They literally want us to take the money out of our back pockets and to waste it. They want us to believe in this erroneous notion that somehow the government holds all the answers, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. Because when you stop and take a step back and analyze this in objective fashion, you must recall that our founding fathers did not want there to be a great conglomeration or centralization of governmental power. They realized that the further away the natural order of things gets from the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, the more apt for corruption it is, and the less capable it is to provide for the specific needs of the American citizens. And folks, we have to be fully honest here. The needs of someone in Texas are not going to be the same as the needs of someone in another part of the country. Yes, the overarching aspect of our national identity and our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights are the same, but the challenges, hurdles, obstacles, and adversity that would be facing us are going to be different. That is why the federal government is one of strictly limited powers. But you never know that. You'd never know that if you bought into the historical revisionist crap, or if you just went by the twisted agenda of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, because they don't want to purvey the truth, because again, it would be deleterious, harmful, and destructive towards their dark, twisted machinations and agenda, which is all based in Fabianism, which is nothing short of attempting to incrementally transform the United States of America away from being a constitutionally endowed, representative, Republican form of government to an untenable, unacceptable Fabian socialist dystopia that truly has no place in an open, honest, and free society like that of the United States of America. These, again, are just the facts, folks. These are just the facts as we see them, and we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, come forth and speak into our microphones to convey this message of truth unto you, because it is that important. You must foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of not only our Constitution, but also of your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, because no one else is endowed with the authority, the power, or the wherewithal to defend those rights, nor would we ever want it to be any other way. Because if we gave into the twisted machinations of these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, we would see our standard of living, our way of life, our very sovereignty be illicitly stripped from us. That cannot be accepted. That cannot be tolerated. But again, this is all part of creating that new government caste system. They want to punish those who work and use taxpayer funds to support organizations that many find, as I mentioned already, morally reprehensible. If you stop and think about it, that in and of itself constitutes a violation of the First Amendment's free exercise clause, because they are forcing you to pay into something that is morally repugnant. Now, of course, they try and split hairs there and say that none of taxpayer funding goes to abortions, but who's really overseeing this? There's already been a scandal with respect to Planned Parenthood. We've already seen that the courts have been ignoring the will of the American people. We've already seen that they are part of this caste system because they are favored with the particular upper crust of the Fabian socialists. And again, it goes back to what Alexis de Tocqueville said with respect to any supporter of socialism. Anyone who supports socialism is in fact pushing for a new age form of feudalism, because they want to micromanage the facets of our daily lives, to control us from cradle till grave. That is their overarching agenda. That is what they push for. That is what they work for. That is what their meticulous, unending, incessant goal is. And they have been ruthless and tireless in their efforts. This is why you see the United States continue on a leftward slide, even after we get conservative government. But part of the problem, too, is that the gutless opposition party, or GOP, has dropped the ball. They have basically not done anything to combat the rise of this just unacceptable caste system. They have empowered the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists because they've had a chance to pull up to the gravy train. That's what they want. They want to continue to illicitly amass power at the great expense of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. And again, that is how this caste system came about. The caste system supports all that they are dreaming for. And of course, their dreams are in staunch opposition to our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. But given the hostility towards faith in the United States today, it'll be nigh impossible to block Hillary's attempt here. Again, this is why Trump presents such a danger. He doesn't really disagree with this, as we have pointed out before. A caste system goes against everything we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. There can be no question that the current course of events in the United States is not in the best interest of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. That, of course, means that the government is acting against the best wishes and in a manner which is diametrically opposed to the foundational image that our founding fathers had for this nation at its inception 235 years ago. But of course, that's not going to change their opinion. That's not going to change the way they act to it. They just expect us to sit down, shut up, and accept it come hell or high water. But we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, provide a voice for you, to provide you with the tools necessary to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution, and thereby your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, so that you can put your foot down and say no. That is the first step, folks. It is, by its nature, the first step. You know, I have to make a reference back to something that I had stated during the latter part of the last segment. We've oftentimes mentioned the fact that Alexis de Tocqueville stated that any form of socialism is just a new age version of feudalism. And of course, he said this as it directly relates to the sort of caste system we see emerging in the United States. He wanted to prevent that from happening in the United States. He thought that the United States was a vibrant culture, community, and that it was a great, philosophical approach to polity, and that the spirit of the American people was the spirit of freedom. We were born out of philosophy, as the late Maggie Thatcher said. In fact, she said that Europe was founded on history, whereas the United States of America was founded on a philosophy. But of course, that is what makes the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists so dangerous. It's because they are diametrically opposed to a philosophy of freedom. And let's make no bones about it, folks. The United States of America is the philosophy of liberty, freedom, justice, and a true sense of equality. Not this bastardized version that the left is trying to cram down our throats today. Not this bastardized version that Donald J. Trump wants to have, with the government providing food, housing, and health care. Or not food, but education, housing, and health care. As he said at that CNN town hall meeting back during the primary process. You see, this is really the disaster that the 2016 presidential election cycle is developing into. It is a debacle. There is no other way to describe it other than a sheer unadulterated debacle. But the fact that Hillary Clinton was not held accountable for her email scandal, among various other scandals, is proof positive that they've been treated as though they're above the law. That's literally what they believe. They believe that they cannot be held accountable because they think they don't have to follow the law. The law is meant for the peons, the citizens. That is so diametrically opposed to the way that this country was founded. That goes against that foundational philosophy that Maggie Thatcher reveled in. Why? Because when you look at the opening lines to the preamble to the United States Constitution, you see in bold letters, "We the people." That means we are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, that we delegated certain power and authority to the federal government through the contract, governed by the clear and concise terms of that contract, which is none other than our shared United States Constitution. Again, this is what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists don't want you to think about. This is why the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media aren't going to cover this in such a way. They don't want you to think about it. They don't want you to come to this realization because, again, that works against and would be detrimental to their propagandistic agenda. And therefore, they cannot try and push the truth. But of course, that is also directly contrary to the notion that the United States is a nation of laws and not of men. You see, that whole notion of equal protection under the law, that's where that comes into play. And clearly, the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists don't care about that. They don't want to adhere to that because, again, they're trying to erect this new caste system that really is not new at all. It's feudal. It's the old medieval caste system that was discarded many years ago, centuries ago, and they want to force that on us because they think they know best. They think they can do better for us than we ourselves can do. But that is bovine excrement. Nothing could be further from the truth. Because of the foundational philosophy of the United States of America, it is we the people that are to think for ourselves, to act for ourselves. There is no greater freedom than free will. And that goes back to biblical times. Because if you remember, the fall of humanity was that they abused free will. But that was what differentiated man from all of God's other creation. Isn't that amazing? It truly is amazing, but of course, they don't want to talk about it. They just don't want to. Now, nevertheless, Hillary is not the only one that likes to feign that she's for the little guy. Trump has repeatedly gone out to claim that the government should take care of everyone. And he always prefaces that by saying, well, I know this isn't very Republican. I built a tower. I got perfect hair forever. I got smally hands. And I'll build a wall and Mexico will pay. Why? Because I'm the mafioso coafioso. But it's not based in reality. And he's already stated in The Art of the Deal that he would always take the harshest position to then try and turn around and work it back to what he really wants. When everything is negotiable, it means you have no firm beliefs. But you have to realize, with respect to the foundational philosophy of these United States of America, certain things are non-negotiable. Chief among them, our fundamental and inalienable rights which were endowed to us by our Creator, who happens to be none other than the God of nature himself. Again, this is the sort of deep, abstract thinking that the Lion Branch Trumpidians, in unison with the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and those turncoats and the supposed conservative punditry and commensurate, don't want to think about. They don't want to wrap around it. In the case of Trump, it's too bigly for him. Way, way too bigly. It's not written in crayon so that he can understand it. I'm not sure what color he'd want. Maybe gold, since he likes to do everything in gold. Anyway, he is part of the problem. And the fact that he was able to thrust himself into the nomination for the gutless opposition party shows us just how far we have fallen as a political movement. But when you stop and think about all of this in an objective fashion, you can only conclude that the powers that Trump was speaking of, the powers that Hillary speak of, are to be found nowhere within the confines of the Constitution. That's the problem. Far too many who wield or seek to wield the reins of political power in this once thriving and flourishing representative Republican vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours don't care what the Constitution says. It's clear that Hillary thinks she's not beholden to it, but Trump doesn't believe that he is either. You know, it's baffling that this is the way things have turned out. But it's for that reason that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have been warning about Trump for nearly a year now, folks. He doesn't believe that the law applies to him. Recall that he stated that he could go out onto Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and never lose a voter for it. And that is such a powerful statement of his and exposes his true twisted machinations that I need to cue up this soundbite just to have a quick reminder of what it is he said.
The people, my people are so smart. And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible. I don't have people speaking in my ear and telling me like, oh, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that. All of these different people. I don't have lobbyists with me. I know the lobbyists. I mean, I've used the lobbyists. I mean, I've done very well with lobbyists, but believe me, they control your candidates. I've turned down millions and millions of dollars I feel foolish actually doing it. You want to know the truth? I said, no, I don't want your $5 million. No, don't give me $2 million. I go back to, it's just not my way of life. I always was like, hey, I have to say this. I was very greedy. Now I'm going to be greedy for the country. We have to take in money.
Wow, what a message. What a message. Greedy for the country. No, Jack Wad, that's not what it's about. But you see, what he's doing there is he is mocking his own voters and supporters. He is mocking his own Lion Branch Trump videos. But they don't realize it. They have drunk so deeply of the quaffade that Trump Jones is going to create a new Jonestown, and the GOP is its victim. But again, it's beyond belief. It truly is beyond belief, because he referenced this as some macabre way of pointing to the overzealous support exhibited by the Lion Branch Trumpidians. It's also a blatant display of his belief that the laws don't apply to him. I could go out onto Fifth Avenue and shoot someone, and then recall that he sat there and he said, I don't have people in my ear telling me you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that. Well, maybe you ought to, because you are too much of a loose cannon. And that's why you don't want to reach out to people. I honestly believe, having examined the great weight of the evidence, that there can be no doubt that this man is not serious about winning. He has no desire to win, that was never his goal, that he doesn't care about any and all of this. But that's where we are. That is where he has left us. And the gutless opposition party, particularly the detente wing thereof, really does bear the brunt of the blame, with the bizarre ascendancy of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around Bulgarian Donaldov Julius Caesar Trumpolini. And he is unfathomable because of the way he acts, and because of stupid statements like the one I just played in that soundbite right there. But it's also a blatant display that he thinks he's above everything. Why do we make a big deal over this? Well, because the United States is governed by a supreme law of the land, which, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, is none other than our shared United States Constitution itself. I know that we've harped on that on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, but it is of the utmost significance and substantive importance. And the fact that Trump wants to disregard it and wants to ignore it clearly indicates that he is not qualified to wield the reins of political power in this country. Neither is Hillary Clinton. Neither is Hillary Clinton. But it matters also because the United States Constitution enumerates and safeguards our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And that has always been the crux of who we are, both as a nation and as a people. It goes to the very foundation of the United States of America. Think back to the poetic language that Thomas Jefferson penned in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain fundamental and unalienable or inalienable rights, that chief among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, Trump obviously disregards that. Hillary obviously disregards that. Where does that leave us when the two candidates, the two nominees for the mainstay political parties, are basically the flip side of the same titular coin? It leaves us in a very degraded and dangerous position. It leaves us exposed. It threatens the sanctity of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. What it also does is it constitutes a gross mischaracterization of our system of polity, because it makes these people think that they can go out and say and do anything, just as long as it goes along with their twisted machinations. And that makes them think that they can laud power over us, when in fact nothing, absolutely nothing, could be further from the truth. As we have frequently repeated, the duty, obligation, and above all, responsibility to proactively maintain and safeguard those rights is ours. Trump and Hillary want you to believe that the government can provide for you. What an asinine thought. Truly, what an asinine thought. But so many have bought into it. The fact that nerdface Bernie Sanders could be a quote-unquote viable candidate in the 2016 primary process just baffles the mind. He would have been laughed out of the running a decade ago. And that is not the line of thought or reason that is congruous with the foundational philosophy of the United States. But it is part of that new caste system that they're trying to create. As we see, they want to believe the government is best, knows best, can do anything. But the government is the last source of provision anyone should look to. And that is because the government is by its nature parasitic, destructive, insipid, and worthless. It truly is worthless because it is so corrupt, so inefficient, and it denies us our individual humanity. There really is no other way to describe it. Yes, there is a need for government, but certainly not to the scope and extent that it has ballooned out to in the United States. Because if we turn our back on the limited form of government that our founding fathers handed to us, then we are abandoning the most open, honest, and longest lasting free government this world has ever known. Stop and think about just the significance of what that means. What does that mean if we abandon that? It means that we are thereby allowing ourselves to fall into this new caste system that deprives us of our human dignity and decency, that seeks to strip and deprive us of our own individual faculties and our own creativity and ingenuity. That is so diametrically opposed to what America was always about. What created the Gilded Age? The ability of people to think for themselves, to create things to better the lives of their fellow citizens. And philanthropy was more vibrant in that era than it is under the government. Why? Because now people are forced to pay at gunpoint instead of doing it out of generosity. But of course, with the decay of morality, people are beginning to think that's fine, except that they also couch it rather hypocritically with this notion of, well, I'm entitled to it. The entitlement mentality that is plaguing the United States of America. It's rooted in this sort of thought. It's absolutely rooted in this sort of thought. Now, while Trump likes to compare himself to Reagan, I think it's important to recall that Reagan said that the scariest words in the English language are, I'm with the government and I'm here to help. The hell you're here to help. All government does is muck things up, make things worse, strip and deprive the people of their fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. But if you remember the way that George Mason had concluded when he was called upon to assist in the drafting of the Declaration of Rights for the state of Virginia that became the very model and basis for the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, or the Bill of Rights, he said that these fundamental and inalienable God-given rights are not to be abridged. That no rightful, legitimate, earthly authority could abridge, belittle, besmirch, take away those rights without due process under the law. But if you think back to when the Democrats were sitting there for the no fly, no buy, or we cry, especially if you mention due process, they were trying to attack our rights, violating the Second Amendment, violating the Fifth, Sixth Amendments, due process, and also the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. And on top of that, the Ninth Amendment, because they were attempting to use rights to disparage or belittle or take away other rights listed within the Bill of Rights. That is strictly prohibited by the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared Constitution. Now, if they wanted to legitimately take away that right, then they need to amend the Constitution. But the no-fly list, there is no due process with that. And you cannot take away a fundamental and inalienable right, like that of the right to keep and bear firearms as safeguarded and guaranteed by the clear and concise language of the Second Amendment, without due process. And they said that was killing us. So they're saying that our rights are killing us. Go to hell. Our rights are not killing us. It's dithering idiots, blithering morons like that, who have no respect for the supreme law of the land, irrespective of the fact that they swore an oath to the best of their ability to uphold and defend and protect that Constitution from all enemies, whether they be foreign or domestic. Why are we not holding these people accountable? Why are these people never held accountable? That is something I think we need an answer to, because when you stop and think about it, they are the ones that have been doing everything in their power to strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. But with respect to Trump, he is a master salesman. And there is something funny to point out about this, because since we are talking about a caste system, Trump wants you to think you're a member of a club, kind of creating this superficial caste system. And that is that Josh Feldman over at Mediaite published a piece covering the Trump camp's discounted Golden Trump membership card you can purchase. Well, isn't that a bit like a card-carrying member of the Communist Party? Is that really the imagery that Trump wants to set here? Is that really what he thinks will convince us that he's a goodly candidate with perfect hair forever? He built a tower. Give me an ever-loving break. We are sick and tired of this. We are sick and tired of the chicanery that has become the hallmark of this 2016 presidential election cycle. Nothing seems to be sacred anymore. Nothing. Why does this feel like an outtake from the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Gene Wilder? It's as though Trump thinks a golden ticket will lead him to the White House with a magical gobstopper that never vanishes. What a load of bovine excrement. Of course, the whole thing smells of schnozberry and really has no place in an open and honest electoral process. To me, this proves that it's all about flash and no substance. And you know what the archaic English term for that was, folks? Get ready for this. I know we've mentioned it before. Trumpery. Flashy, showy, meaningless. But that's been Trump's spiel since he threw his quaff into the ring last July. Of course, it's done nothing to help his standing in the polls, and Trump is still Trumpery again, as opposed to substance. That's what the American people are wanting, is substance. That is what we really need, because what it truly comes down to is the further that we divorce and distance ourselves from the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, the more this death spiral of the United States of America will continue unabated and indeed accelerate at an exponential rate. Can we afford that? Honestly, can we sit there and ask ourselves whether we can afford this? Because I think we can ill afford it right now. I don't think that we are in a strong enough of a position right now, as we are in the grips of an identity crisis and a slew of constitutional crises, to ask this sort of question. Our sovereignty, our very way of life, our freedoms and liberties hang in the very balance. But of course, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media aren't going to report it that way. They're not going to cover this in depth. They're not going to give you the truth. They're just going to sit there running around, henny penny, the sky is falling, we need free abortion, we need free this, free that. Give me an ever-loving break, because it has no connection with reality. It has no connection with those things that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. But they're going to continue going down this line. They're going to continue to try and say that they know what's best for us and that we should just sit down, shut up, and take it because government, Big Brother, is goodly. But is that true? No. Of course it's not true. If it were true that it was better for us, then the country would have been founded that way. Because if you recall, the natural law tenets that form the foundation, the bedrock foundation of both our representative Republican form of government and our shared United States Constitution are by their very nature timeless, meaning they're just as applicable today as they were 235 years ago, as God willing they will be 235 years from today. But again, that goes against the twisted, frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist agenda. That's why they're not going to cover it in any detail. That's why they're not going to pay any meaningful attention to it other than to besmirch it, to disparage it, to try and make the American people despair and despondent over all of these attempts to drastically and radically redefine who we are both as a nation and as a people. But you know who holds the power to stop them? It's not some quaff like messianic figure. It's not some man with small hands coming out of a tower proclaiming that he and he alone possesses the power and authority and the wherewithal to place this nation back onto the path of prosperity. No, it's our duty, our obligation, our responsibility in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. That is what our founding fathers would have expected of us. That is the course of conduct that a free and open society like that of the United States of America must take. Otherwise, we will fall victim to this further moral and actual decay of a land that was based on philosophy, and it will give way to a medieval caste system, to feudalism, to what Thomas Paine referred to as the most wicked form of government ever devised by the hands of men. Why would we want to return to that? I know why they do. It's because they would be able to laud power. They would carve out a special niche for themselves. They would in sense become the neo-nobility. But why are so many people convinced that it's best to allow that to happen? Well, it's because they don't want to pull their heads out of their posteriors long enough to realize just how detrimental that is to them, to realize just how much of a loathsome system that really is. And make no mistake about it, folks, that is a loathsome and despicable system. A system that should have no place in a free society. No. The Lion Branch Trumpidians don't want to think about that. They just want to burn everything down. Damn the torpedoes. Don't give a damn about the consequences. We'll just see what happens from here. What an idiotic way to approach things. That's not how you restore a country, to be a wrecking ball. No. But of course, they're going to continue to convince themselves that they know best, and that we should all just sit down, shut up, and join them in a tyranny of false unity. Well, they can go straight to hell, because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to acquiesce. I'm not going to bend my knee to their will, particularly when that will is diametrically opposed to the one thing that we as American citizens are called to swear allegiance to, the United States Constitution. We swear allegiance to the Constitution, not to individuals, but Trump had his followers swear allegiance to him. Folks, this is nothing short of bread and circuses to convince us that there is no caste system in place. But everywhere we turn, we see that the country is in disarray. The elites thumb their noses at the people, but one elite managed to convince disillusioned conservatives that he's one of them. That's why he is the Pied Piper of disillusioned conservatives. He's playing his discordinal quaff horn, and the people are just lollygagging behind him. But what is the price? The price is the progeny of this country. If you go back to the original tale of the Pied Piper, he was going off with the children, the future of that village, when they refused to pay the price. That's where the term pay the piper comes from. Trump's just doing this for money. He already said in that one soundbite that it's about greed. I'm greedy for myself, but now I'm greedy for the nation, blah, 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 blah. No, he's still just greedy for himself. That's all he's ever cared about. That's all he ever will care about. But that just goes to show that it's all part of the same unacceptable caste system that we should do our utmost to avoid. We literally should. But the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are not going to portray it to you in that fashion. And the Trump camp sure as hell isn't going to, because, again, it would hurt him. It would take away his bizarre goals. Folks, when we're faced with this undeniable effort by the so-called establishment and even the populist movements to establish a caste system, is it any wonder, then, that record numbers of Americans are beginning to arm themselves? Of course, we've seen all throughout this disastrous 2 terms of the Barack Hussein Obama regime that after any shooting, of which there always seems to be more under the tutelage of these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, they attempt to go out and put out these harsh, draconian, quote-unquote, common sense gun control regulations. Why? What does it do? What does it accomplish? Nothing. And that's what a study has shown. A study that has been put out by the Crime Research or Crime Prevention Research Center shows that those who are lawful gun owners don't go out and commit gun crimes. So again, if you've got an outlaw that's already breaking the law, that's already dedicated themselves to ignoring our legal system, then why would they change their stripes? Why would they not continue to break the law? What's one more law to? That's the thing, folks. These do-gooders, these people that just want to have the government provide all answers, every solution for every problem that is conceivable, they don't consider the truth of what it is they do. They don't consider how it disparately impacts the law-abiding citizens. And again, it's because they don't think the law applies to them. They think it only applies to us. And that is the disgusting aspect of it all. It's always that way, that even if the laws are couched in good intentions, there are always unintended consequences. But in this case, the consequences are intended. So the road to hell is paved in unintended consequences and good intentions, but the intentions here are bad, so it's even worse. But it goes back to this undeniable effort to establish a caste system in which they are trying to deprive us of the ability to rise up against any twisted machination they force and cram down our throats. Now, folks, we're not advocating for armed insurrection. Rather, we're noting that the American people feel trapped by the powers that be. And is it any wonder the way that they've been acting, the way that they try and use every one of these incidents, tragic as they are, for some advantage, for some political brownie points, because that's what they work for. That's what they hope to achieve. And they are relentless in their efforts. And these efforts are meticulous. That's, again, Fabianism is all about incrementalization. It's named after the General Fabius, who finally defeated Hannibal, using incremental steps to draw him out, to stretch out his supply lines, and to leave him vulnerable to a pincer maneuver, and that's ultimately what defeated him. That's what they're about. They are about being wolves in sheep's clothing. In fact, that was their original iconography, because when you recall, the Fabian Society traces its origins back to 19th century Great Britain, and George Bernard Shaw was one of their early founders, and he wanted to be able to infiltrate and pervert polite society. That's how they do it. That's their insidious nature, and it's in full swing and effect in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. There's no doubt about it. And throughout the tenure of the disastrous Obama regime, there have been just numerous attempts to abridge the Second Amendment, which is the right to keep and bear firearms. Of course, the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists proclaim that they're not going to grab our guns. Isn't it funny? They always say that. It's like how they said under FDR that Social Security would never become a form of identifying, that it would not become a safety net, that it was not meant to be permanent. Yeah, right. Well, here we are. Some 70 years after the fact, almost 80 years after the fact, and it's still here, and it's used for identification purposes. All of the things they said it would never become, it has become. There's no doubt about that. And that's the thing. That's why you can't trust these people. Oh, it's just a small step. Oh, it's just a little thing. Bovine excrement. Because it always winds up being more. Always winds up being greater than what they claim. But keeping the new caste system in mind, the only logical end goal that these freaks could have and do have is that of stripping decent, law-abiding, hard-working, red-blooded American citizens of their fundamental and inalienable God-given rights to keep and bear firearms. Now, the thing that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media don't want to tell you is about that study that I mentioned, which lays out the facts that legal gun owners are the least likely to commit so-called gun crimes. And that really did come from the Crime Prevention Research. And it's just amazing to see Because, of course, they're going to sit there and try and say, oh, this is the gun lobby, the big, bad, mean, nasty gun lobby. But when we look at this, it says that, according to the report, there are now more than 14.5 million law-abiding gun owners across the 50 states. And that number is rising more rapidly now than ever before. So already the fear-mongering is going to come out, oh, this is bad. People are harming themselves. Well, you know, that's the way they always do it. And then last year, the number of legally licensed armed citizens increased by 1.73 million citizens. That surpassed the previous year's record of 1.69 million new licenses and permits. These people are abiding by the law. These are the very people that the Barack Hussein Obama regime wants to punish, the very people that Donald Julius Caesar Trumpolini wanted to punish when he supported the 2013 Diane Frankenstein assault weapons ban. And of course, it's what Hillary Rotten Clinton wants to support as well. They're not out for, they're not out for our best interest. They're not looking out for us as they would proclaim and have us believe. That's just nothing short of bovine excrement. And again, why? It's because they want to create this deleterious caste system that should be relegated to the rubbish bin of history. Feudalism should have no place in a free, representative republic like that of the United States of America. For the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism, for the salivating mainstream media don't want you to know your history. Damn sure the historical revisionists that infest the ivory tower of academia don't want you to know about it. And Hillary Rotten Clinton doesn't want you to know either. Why? Because they think they will be the new nobility. Now, if they are the new nobility, it makes me wonder where in this caste system does the salivating mainstream media fall? I think court jester. Now, Trump would like to be the court jester. He'd like to build the building hall and the great hall where the court jesters would perform, but he's not bigly enough for that. He's not goodly enough for that. But that's just par for the course with these people. They are all about abusing power. And of course, it goes to this claim that they have the gun lobbies. Oh, the gun lobbies, they kill people. They harm people. They have mystical powers. And Hillary herself has screeched about the so-called gun lobbies' mystical power. And then, of course, she goes out and does the thing that frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists always do. They follow the agenda of Kat Sunstein, which is to never allow a tragedy to go to waste. So she took one of the daughters of a Sandy Hook victim and made a commercial out of it. And I've got that queued up right now.
My wedding was one of the last things I planned with my mom. It was a very bittersweet day because it's just all one big reminder of the giant hole where she used to be. My mom was my best friend. She was the principal of Sandy Hook School. My mom was murdered while trying to protect the children in her care from a gunman. No more families should have to go through what we have. Hillary Clinton is the only candidate that has what it takes to take on the gun lobby. No one is fighting harder to reform our gun laws than Hillary. She reminds me of my mother. She isn't scared of anything. And that's how I know that she is the person that can actually make a difference. That's why I believe in her. That's why millions of other Americans believe in her. There's finally someone who can change things.
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
Well, I'm glad you approve of it, you little witch. You know, she doesn't remind me of my mother. You want to know who she reminds me of? She reminds me of the Wicked Witch of the West. Remember the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz? That's who Hillary Rotten Clinton is. And yes, it's very sad that this poor little girl lost her mummy. But you want to know why Sandy Hook was able to be as bad as it was? Why the Umpqua Community College shooting was as bad as it was? It's because you create these gun-free zones. Go back to this notion that an armed society is a polite society, and you will see that this sort of nonsense, this sort of chicanery would come to a swift and immediate end. But that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about stripping and depriving law-abiding, decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizens of their fundamental and inalienable God-given right to keep and bear firearms. They want to make us all victims like her mummy. That's why I can sit here as I speak into this microphone and say, go to hell. Yes, I'm fully sympathetic to your loss. It's a damn shame that those corrupt politicians made a gun-free zone. It's a damn shame that your mummy was probably one of the ones that sat there and said, we can't have guns on campus. Oh, you know, these criminals, they're going to see that sign, a gun-free zone, can't go in here. Give me an ever-loving break. But again, it's part of the caste system. Surely these damn peasants would never, ever break the law. Well, we just need more laws to restrict guns in entirety. That's going to, that's going to stop it. I love it. Let's go and outlaw death. Do you think that'll stop death? Let's go outlaw death. Then people will live forever, right? That is the asinine quality of their pathetic excuse for logic. And folks, we can't even deign to call that logic. That is sheer stupidity. There is no other way to refer to that other than as sheer stupidity. It is the personification of stupidity. But Hillary's gonna stop gun crimes, yay! Raw emotionalism doesn't work. It didn't work with the Lion Branch Trumpidians because it's not convincing those of us who are logically based, those of us who have a modicum of reason and sanity to support him. And it damn sure isn't going to work with Hillary because it's not going to convince me that she's the great candidate. It's a bunch of crap. There's no other way to describe it other than being a bunch of crap. But that's what it is. And it ignores the findings of the studies, like that one that I mentioned just a little bit earlier. Of course, this ad is typical. It is a typical piece of propaganda. That's all it is. The left always tries to politicize a tragedy based on Kat Sunstein's old saying, never let a tragedy go to waste. That's what I mentioned earlier. That is clearly what they are trying to do. That is clearly what they believe in, and they will never stop trying to achieve that. But when you stop and think about this in a logical fashion, you must come to the realization that the Second Amendment protects us from being forced into a medieval-style caste system. It also protects us from the mass shooters. The mass shooters choose these so-called gun-free zones because they know it's a soft target. When you create soft targets, you are just openly inviting this sort of barbarism and carnage. But again, the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists don't want to talk about that. The graduates of the Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media sure as hell doesn't want to discuss it because, again, it goes against their twisted machinations, their twisted goals, their attempts to destroy us. That literally is what they believe, it's what they adhere to, and they are not backing down from it. These Fabians just don't care. They never have, they never will. It's all about their power. They're the ones that believe their world can only be protected by disarming the American citizenry. That's literally how they think about it. That's literally the conclusions they come to. And it's erroneous. It's diametrically opposed to that philosophy upon which we are founded upon. But they don't care. We must keep in mind what Machiavelli said, however, in The Prince, which was his magnus opus. A ruler who disarms his citizens dishonors them. That's the thing, folks. They dishonor us on a daily basis. They go out of their way to dishonor us because they loathe and despise who we are, both as a nation and as a people. They want to have absolute power and control, and they'll use lies, they'll use propaganda, they will use anything to achieve it. Because ultimately, they don't want you to have the power to stand up for yourself, to believe in yourself, to do what's necessary, to take the steps that are necessary to keep you, your family, and your loved ones safe. Why? Because they don't like the natural law, the natural order of things. And as we have so oft times previously stated on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, the fundamental building block of society begins with the family, the nuclear family. And have you ever noticed that these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist agendas, programs, plans, pogroms are all about destroying the family? The war on poverty, that's done it. The way that they go about trying to implement these things and creating identity politics, that destroys families. They're out to destroy morality. It all ties into their overarching agenda, which is a disgusting, nefarious, steaming pile of excrement. I don't mean to be crass, folks, but that's literally what they are doing, literally what they have done, and it is detrimental to each and every one of us in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. Again, if they can continue to have the power that they do and to never move away from it, they will just be allowed to run ramshod over we the people, we the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. We can ill afford to allow them to go forward with this. We can ill afford to allow them to trample upon our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because if we do that, then we lose everything. Without our rights, as my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, has so oft times mentioned, we have nothing. Because then they get to dictate everything. They control everything. They become the masters of our destiny, which they were never intended to be. That's the danger that we face. The danger that we face when we don't pay attention to what's happening around us. Power is what the political game has evolved into. It's all these freaks care about. That's the reason why they stand in staunch opposition to our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. They perceive these rights as a direct threat to their ultimate goal of power. And think about it, folks, that is all they care about. That is all they ever work towards. That is all they believe in. And so they will stop at nothing to achieve it, irrespective of what it does to the country and to the popular sovereigns. Because again, it's not about us, it's about them. It's about their power. They perceive our rights as a direct threat to them. Saying goes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yet, in the case of the Fabians, they're corrupt before they ever even got power. Their entire philosophy and ideology is based on corruption. It's based on a lie. It's based on a fraud. And here we are. That's what it's about. It's about orchestrating this, about grabbing power for themselves at the great expense of we the people. Because they know best. Government knows best. That's always the mindset of this flawed and failed ideology. An ideology that goes against everything we hold near and dear in this country. An ideology that is diametrically opposed to all those things that are of the utmost importance to each and every one of us. They don't trust us to think for ourselves, to act for ourselves, to be self-accountable, self-responsible, and ultimately self-determinate. They want to make every determination for us. And the tragic aspect of it all is they have convinced enough Americans to close their eyes to it, to believe that this is the way that the nation is meant to be, when in fact nothing, absolutely nothing, could be further from the truth. That is why it falls upon our shoulders to be proactive, to be meticulous in the maintenance and safeguarding of our God-given rights. Because no one else will stand up for our rights. No one else can. Stop looking for some messianic figure to come down from Providence on a quaff-shaped cloud to rain magical goody dandruff on you, as if that will somehow free us from the chains and shackles of governmental tyranny, oppression, despotism, and control. You see, folks, they want us to be beholden to government. They want us to bow down at the altar of the almighty state. Why? Again, power, control, corruption. These are the hallmarks of their movement. And it speaks volumes about the current state of affairs in the United States of America when the nominees for the two mainstay political parties are essentially the same person. They follow the same beliefs, they acquiesce to the same deals, they do the same destruction. They are one in the same. That's why he gave $100,000 to the Clinton Foundation, what I mentioned all the way back in the first segment, the opening segment. Again, he thinks he's above the law. She thinks she's above the law. How is that any different? And how does that make either one the lesser of two evils when you consider that the United States of America is supposed to be a nation of laws and not of men? Folks, I think the answer to that question is both open and obvious. It's an answer that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media don't want you to think about. It's an answer that Hillary Rotten Clinton and Donald J. Trump alike don't want you to think about, because it would expose them for the frauds, the charlatans, and the hucksters that they are. It exposes them for the deleterious and destructive chaos and anarchy that they want to unleash upon this, our beloved homeland. We cannot allow that to come to fruition. We cannot sit idly by and allow our nation to fall into this degradation. And I can think of no more apt of a term to describe it other than that of degradation. It is degradation. They are degrading. They are the ones who think they know best and will be able to answer all problems. What happens when they can't? Then the entire social contract theory falls apart. But again, they don't believe in social contracts. They don't believe that we are capable of building for ourselves, thinking for ourselves, acting for ourselves. It's all about them, all about their power, all about their corruption. You see, their entire philosophy is mired in lies and corruption. That's what makes them much more of a danger than anything else. They are such a clear and present danger to our Republican form of government. Having gained control over the information media outlets, various branches and facets of government, and our institutions of education, they have changed the narrative. And they have unleashed an Orwellian scope of a nightmare here in the land of the free and the home of the brave. It is unfathomable that the United States of America finds herself in such an untenable situation, but here we are. We find ourselves in this untenable situation. It cannot be allowed to continue as a new norm, because if it does, then our duties, obligations, and responsibilities become nigh impossible. We cannot afford this. We cannot allow ourselves to become slaves to the almighty federal government, which, by the way, would be violative of the 13th Amendment. But there I go again. Back to the Constitution, back to basics. You want to smash the caste system, go back to the basic building block, the fundamentals of it all. That's the key. That's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have so oft times reiterated time and again that the key, the solution to the problems that are facing this nation has been with us since the very beginning. The key is none other than the Constitution. And for those people who want to sit there and say the Constitution's not defending them, I ask you, what have you done to stand up and defend the Constitution as of late? Because it is not a living document. It cannot act on its own. It is a contract. It is the duty and obligation and responsibility and even the right of the American people to congregate together for a redress of grievances. That's in the First Amendment, folks. It's one that's not oft times discussed. It's one that Donaldolph, Julius Caesar, Trumpolini, and Hillary Rotten Clinton alike are opposed to. Why do we have to accept them? Why do we have to say that this is the best America can do? Because, by God, this is not the best we can do. Think of it as a term paper. If somebody was trying to turn this in as a term paper, it would get an F. An F for an effed up failure. Because that's what it is. That is literally what it is. It is a failure. It is something that should never be accepted in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. Like con artists, they attempt to hide their true nature and the true intent of their philosophy and their twisted machinations. We must be vigilant to those attempts to develop a caste system, because we're the only ones endowed with the authority to maintain and safeguard our rights. That's by the very design of our Federalist Representative Republic. Remember that Benjamin Franklin said that the founders gave us a republic, and then added most emphatically, if we can keep it. That last line stressed the point that the burden is ours and ours alone. We must stand up for our rights and never give in. That is the true cost of freedom. It really is the true cost of freedom, and we can ill afford to allow that to go into arrears, to become this caste system that they want to force upon us. Now, with that said, it is time for us to go ahead and begin our descent. I'm going to send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Folks, she will not be forcing you into a caste system. She's just there to pour you some alcohol. As always, I'm Randy Wright, and I've been your captain, and I want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. I invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you may have, either here at our YouTube page, our Google Plus page, or our Facebook page. And on top of that, I invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find our departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, our Blogspot account that has audio blogs and various other useful information, and of course the Cafe Press account, where we have all sorts of trinkets and goodies with our classical traditional logo on it, or our first class passenger logo on it. Things from drinking glasses, shot glasses, clothing, apparel, clocks, watches, iPad covers, iPhone covers, Galaxy Pad covers, Galaxy phone covers. There's just so much there, folks. Take a look and give us a little bit of support so that we can continue to bring you this sheer enlightenment. Thank you again, folks. We'll see you next time. Do take care.